3.5 years ago, I looked at my wife sleeping peacefully in our bed on a Saturday morning in early August, knowing it would be the last time I ever saw her face. She had no idea I knew the truth. She had no idea that 3 packed suitcases sat in my car outside. She had no idea that in 20 minutes I would walk out of her life forever. I stood in that doorway, my heart shattered but my resolve solid as steel, watching the woman I had promised forever to the woman who had promised the same to me. Then I walked to the kitchen, placed my wedding ring on the counter, and disappeared. She never found me, until a year later when she showed up at my door. Before I tell you how she finally found me and what happened when she showed up at my new doorstep, let me know where you are watching from, and please hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, you will want to hear how silence became my strongest weapon. I met Courtney 5 years before everything fell apart. It was at a tech conference in Denver, one of those massive events where hundreds of people network and pretend to care about panel discussions. I was there as a speaker talking about artificial intelligence applications in everyday software. She worked for the company organizing the event, running around with a clipboard and a headset, making sure everything ran smoothly. Our eyes met across a crowded ballroom during the lunch break, and I know it sounds like a cliché, but something just clicked. She approached me after my panel not to flirt, but to tell me my presentation was the only one that day that actually made sense to someone outside the tech bubble. Her honesty made me laugh. We grabbed coffee, which turned into dinner, which turned into a weekend exploring Denver together. Courtney was smart, genuinely funny, passionate about her work in ways that made me respect her immediately. She had this energy, this brightness that felt rare. 2 years of dating flew by like nothing. We did the long-distance thing for a while. I was in Portland, she was bouncing between cities for work, but we made it happen. Video calls every night, weekend visits, stupid inside jokes that nobody else understood. When I proposed to her on a random Tuesday in her tiny apartment because I could not wait another day, she said yes before I even finished the question. Our wedding was small, just close friends and family in a garden outside Seattle. Our first year of marriage felt like everything I had hoped it would be. We found a modest apartment in Portland, nothing fancy, but it was ours. I worked remotely as a software engineer, and she continued with her event marketing job, which meant she traveled a lot. We cooked together on the nights she was home, tried every Thai restaurant in the city, spent Sundays watching old movies in our pajamas. We talked about buying a house someday, about having kids within the next 3 years. Simple dreams, but they felt real. Then came February of our 3rd year together. Looking back, that was when the cracks started showing, tiny fractures I convinced myself were nothing. Courtney started getting busier at work. Late meetings that stretched past 10 at night, business trips that seemed to multiply week after week. Her phone became an extension of her hand, always face down on the table, always taken into the bathroom with her. Small changes appeared that I noticed, but explained away. She started wearing makeup to the office more carefully, bought new clothes, signed up for a gym membership she actually used. I told myself she was working toward a promotion. Her company was expanding, opening new offices, and she had mentioned wanting to move up. It made sense that she would put in extra effort. I trusted her. That trust was the foundation of everything we had built. One night in early March, she told me she had to fly to Seattle for 3 days for a major client pitch. I kissed her goodbye at the door, told her I loved her, watched her roll her suitcase to the Uber. She texted me from the airport, sent a photo of her gate, complained about the coffee. Everything seemed normal. I went back to my code, worked late, ordered pizza, fell asleep on the couch like I always did when she traveled. April arrived with cherry blossoms and a sick feeling in my stomach that would not go away. I was paying bills one afternoon when I noticed something odd on our shared credit card statement. There was a charge from an expensive Italian restaurant in downtown Portland. The date was stamped for a Thursday evening 2 weeks prior. The same night, Courtney had told me she was in Seattle for that client pitch. I stared at the screen, my brain trying to find an explanation that made sense. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe the restaurant charged the wrong date. Maybe I was remembering wrong about when she traveled. But I was not remembering wrong. I checked my calendar, checked her texts from that week. She had definitely told me she was in Seattle. I opened her email on our shared laptop, the old one she barely used anymore but had never bothered to log out of. I found the hotel confirmation. She had booked a room in Seattle, then canceled it 2 days before the trip. The cancellation email sat right there in her trash folder. My hands shook as I closed the laptop. This could not be real. There had to be an explanation. Courtney loved me. We were happy. We were building a life. I spent the rest of that day in a fog, trying to work but accomplishing nothing, waiting for her to come home. When she walked through the door that evening, laughing at something on her phone, I felt this strange disconnect, like I was watching a movie of my life instead of living it. She kissed my cheek, asked about my day, started talking about a new project at work. I wanted to ask her about Seattle, about the restaurant, but fear stopped my throat. Fear that if I asked, everything would become real. Over the next few weeks, I started noticing more. The way she tilted her phone away from me when notifications came in. How she stepped onto the balcony for calls that used to happen in front of me. The smile that appeared on her face when she read certain messages, a smile I recognized because she used to smile at me that way. One evening I walked into the living room and she actually jumped, startled, closing her laptop quickly. "Just work stuff," she said, too fast, too defensive. "Confidential client information." I nodded, said nothing, felt my world tilting sideways. By May, I could not live with the uncertainty anymore. The not knowing was worse than knowing, or at least that was what I told myself. One night after Courtney fell asleep, I sat in the dark living room with her old laptop open in front of me. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might wake her. I navigated to her email, the account she thought she had logged out of months ago but had not. I found them immediately. Emails with someone named Brad, a colleague from their Los Angeles branch. The first few messages seemed professional enough, just work stuff, project updates. Then they shifted. Compliments about her presentation skills, inside jokes I did not understand. Then buried in a thread from 3 weeks ago, I found it. "Cannot wait to see you again. Last weekend was magical. Your husband really has no idea how lucky he is, but I am starting to think his loss might be my gain." Her response made my blood turn cold. "Stop, you are going to make me blush. Last weekend was perfect. I have never felt this way before." I sat there for an hour, maybe longer, reading through months of messages. They had met at a conference in Los Angeles back in January. Started as friendly colleagues, became something else quickly. The Seattle trip she had canceled, she had actually been with him. Multiple business trips that were not business at all. Lies stacked on lies, stacked on lies. The worst part was not even the cheating itself. It was reading how happy she sounded, how free, like she was living some alternate life where I did not exist. She wrote to him with an excitement and passion that had faded from our conversations months ago, and I had been too blind to notice or too scared to confront it. I closed the laptop, went to the bathroom, stared at my reflection. The man looking back at me seemed like a stranger. How had I not seen this? How had I been so stupid? The following weekend, Courtney told me she had a conference in San Francisco. Another work trip, another lie I was supposed to believe. She packed her bag Friday morning, kissed me goodbye, promised to call when she landed. I told her to have a safe trip, that I would miss her. She smiled at me, and I saw nothing in that smile. No guilt, no hesitation, just the practiced ease of someone who had become an expert at deception. After she left, I did something I am not proud of. I checked the location, sharing on our phones, a feature we had turned on years ago for safety when she traveled. I watched the little dot that represented my wife move through the city, watched it arrive at the airport, watched it board a plane to San Francisco. So far, the truth. Then I watched that dot move through San Francisco, away from the conference hotel she had mentioned, toward a residential neighborhood called Mission District. I looked up the address. A short-term rental apartment. Not a hotel, not a conference center. A private apartment where nobody would look twice at a married woman spending the weekend with someone who was not her husband. I could not breathe. I paced our apartment like a caged animal, my phone in my hand, that little dot on the screen mocking me. Part of me wanted to call her, to scream, to demand the truth. The other part of me, the part that was already dying inside, knew that confrontation would change nothing. She would lie. She would make excuses. She would somehow turn this around to make me feel crazy for doubting her. When she came home Sunday evening, suitcase in hand, smile on her face, I asked how the conference went. She told me everything. Details about panels she had attended, people she had networked with, a dinner with potential clients at a restaurant near the waterfront. Every word was a performance, carefully rehearsed, delivered with just enough enthusiasm to seem real. "Where did you stay?" I asked, keeping my voice casual. "The Marriott downtown," she said, without missing a beat. "Nice hotel, terrible pillows." I nodded. Sounds good. Glad it went well. That night, lying next to her in bed, listening to her breathe softly in sleep, I made a decision. I could not do this anymore. I could not sit across from her at breakfast and pretend everything was fine. I could not listen to more lies, could not watch her text him while sitting next to me on the couch, could not keep living in this nightmare that wore the mask of my marriage. But I also knew I did not want the drama of confrontation. I did not want to hear her apologies that would mean nothing. I did not want her tears, her excuses, her attempts to blame me for pushing her away. I did not want Brad's name spoken in our home. I did not want any of it. What I wanted was peace. What I wanted was out. What I wanted was to disappear so completely that she would understand without a single word from me exactly what she had done. June arrived and I started planning. Not planning a confrontation, but planning an escape. Every action I took from that point forward had one purpose: leaving without a trace. I researched my company's remote work policy, discovered we had an expanding office in Austin, Texas. I requested a transfer citing career development opportunities. My manager approved it within a week. Start date early September. Perfect. I opened a new bank account at a different institution, slowly transferred half of our savings into it over several weeks. Not stealing, just taking what was rightfully mine. I found an apartment in Austin through online listings, a small one-bedroom place with lots of windows. I signed the lease electronically, paid the deposit, never visited in person. I contacted a divorce attorney through encrypted email, explained my situation, began preparing paperwork. Everything could be done remotely, the lawyer assured me. I would not have to see Courtney in court. We could handle everything through representatives. The hardest part was packing without her noticing. I started small. A few shirts from the back of my closet books. She never saw me read my winter jacket in the middle of summer. I shipped boxes to my friend Marcus in Seattle, swore him to secrecy, told him I would explain everything later. He asked no questions, just sent me confirmation when each box arrived. Courtney noticed nothing. She was too busy with her double life, too distracted by her phone, too consumed by whatever fantasy she was living with Brad. Some nights she came home late, smelling like cologne that was not mine. Some mornings she showered immediately after waking, washing away evidence I was not supposed to notice. She thought I was blind, stupid content. She had no idea I was 2 steps ahead, carefully dismantling our life while she destroyed it from the inside. The first week of August, everything was ready. My transfer was approved, my apartment was waiting, my belongings were mostly gone. All that remained was picking the moment to leave. I chose a Friday night, August 7th. Courtney came home from work exhausted, complaining about her boss, about deadlines, about stress I knew was probably related to coordinating her affair. I cooked dinner that night, her favorite meal, pasta with homemade sauce and garlic bread. She barely looked up from her phone. We ate in near silence. I watched her, really looked at her, tried to remember the woman I had fallen in love with. She was still beautiful, still had that spark, but it was not for me anymore. Maybe it had not been for me in a long time, and I had just refused to see it. After dinner, she said she had to work the next day, Saturday, just for a few hours. I knew by now that work meant Brad. I said that was fine, that I would probably just catch up on some projects at home. She smiled, relieved, disappeared into the bedroom with her phone. I stayed up all night.